Charles, so good to see you.
So good to meet you, Billy. I hear great things, and thank you so much for doing this with us and collaborating with us. I hear you got some passions for Africa.
Indeed. I had just learned just today that you and I could probably spend hours going through the fascination that the whole continent offers, both the highest of highs and lowest of lows and all points in between. And what really caught my attention was the dedication and foresight that you have maintained in looking deep into beyond just the fascination of Africa as a continent.
You know, it's a fascinating place, and you're absolutely right to say it's unique. I mean, there's so many different countries and different regions and zones. We're going on an Africa tour next month, and it's kind of like a rock star tour. 3 weeks, we're going to South Africa, Zanzibar, Malawi, Burundi, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Egypt in a 3-week time period.
Wow.
5 heads of state. So I giving you guys a run for your money. I mean, it's tough. But on the other hand, you get to meet some amazing people. We're meeting a lot of ministers of innovation. We're meeting a lot of ministers of education and heads of state. And what's really cool is they're all young and they're filled with a lot of passion, and they're digital natives. And they keep asking, why can't we run our government on a cell phone? Why can't we get good records here? Why can't you be able to go to a website and look who owns the property, or, get a currency system that it doesn't inflate 15-20% per year. They have great people, bright people, brilliant people, but the systems are not where they need to be. And they have the political will and mandate to upgrade those. So over the next 5-10 years, there's going to be a Pan-African effort to completely redo the information technology base of the entire continent. The voting systems, the property system, money systems, and it literally transforms people's lives at the end of the day.
Yes, and as you point out, the exuberance, the youthful exuberance, is leading the charge. There's no shortage of interest. There's no shortage of curiosity. I think that the drawbacks are up at a hardware level.
I mean, people want to be treated with respect and dignity, and they want to be treated fairly. And what got me most excited about our entire industry and how we think, how we approach problems is this basic idea that you can create a system where everybody's treated equally. Doesn't matter if they're rich, doesn't matter if they're poor, doesn't matter who they're born to, all these things. And it's all that everybody has open access, and it's all open source. Every product we've built, no patents, no intellectual property, it's all open source. It's there for everybody. And if it can work in Ethiopia, like the Minister of Education deal we have, or some of the other deals that are coming online, it's going to work for the homeless in California. It's going to work for the poor towns in West Virginia and other places that are really getting hit hard. And also creates a new economy. We got NFTs now, we got ICOs, we got all these crazy things that they didn't exist, even 2 years ago. But holy moly, it's really changed the landscape and the playing field. And it's kind of like when color came to television, or VR came. People said, wow, this is incredible. And sometimes it was a little difficult to know exactly how that was going to work out. But over time, the creative medium gave artists and gave entrepreneurs, so many more dimensions to work with and express what they want to say, how they want to say it, but also be able to monetize that. Music industry needs a renaissance. Hollywood needs a renaissance. There's a lot of problems right now in these things. And what's exciting is the same kinds of things that allow you to vote securely, have secure money, have property, can also allow these new business models to run on the same rails and be openly accessible to not just American artists, but also African artists or South American artists, Southeast Asia artists. Like I remember going to Mongolia. There was a band I met there. What was it? The Who? Josh, you remember their name? That Mongolian rock band, the Throat Singers?
The Who.
Yeah, the Who. Yeah, God, holy moly, they're so talented, that band, and they just got discovered by accident. So now they're starting to become rock stars, but they're just like got this old and new blend where they're taking traditional Mongolian throat singing, which is just strange at itself. It's like two dudes singing, same person, and then they add in,
the Tuvans, yeah,
and then they add in hard rock. And you're just like, wow, what am I listening to? This is crazy. And the fact that they could compete on a global market and they don't have to live in Hollywood or Nashville or some other place and be able to actually have a direct relationship with their customers is what it's all about. And hopefully we can build that infrastructure and make that as global as possible.
Yeah, it's a rather ambitious thought process, but you did touch upon some valued terminology, and I think that when you strike the interest of being able to monetize certain things, there is an underlying current of optimism that's being overlooked, and it's glaring. You speak of homeless problems across this country, and by and large, the general response is hands in the air. It's like I can't figure this out, but they're missing a big part of the way that solutions can be brought to the forefront, and it's with this optimism that you're carrying. That's quite exciting.
Yeah, and it makes everybody, just think, how can we solve a problem instead of being so damn cynical? I'm getting tired of cynicism, Billy. Everybody, oh, we can't solve it. Our best days are behind us. Nothing will ever get done. There's fraud here. There's there. This person's a liar. I love that we get to work on systems all day long where you don't really have to care about who you're doing business with, because the system itself keeps everybody honest. I got a great story I love telling. I went over the country of Georgia. Apparently there's a country of Georgia,
Oh, yeah.
Go figure. So I went out of the country of Georgia, and I was in Tbilisi with the old finance minister, Mindia, and he made some political enemies. So they gave him the job that nobody wanted. They're like, hey, go clean up the corrupt police force. It's like, oh, you might as well just shoot me in the head now. That's like the worst job in the entire world. They said, all right, I'll figure it out. So what he did is he secretly trained an entire parallel police force in America. Didn't tell anybody he was doing it. Then he just had them all come in, fired every police officer in the country the same day, and brought in these new guys. And he had two police forces. So there was the regular police and then a different group who would randomly pull over the police. And if they caught him with cash, they'd fire him on site. And so they went from one of the most corrupt to one of the least corrupt police forces in all of Europe, basically overnight. And I asked him, well, how did you come up with all these systems? Bad systems make corrupt cops. If you're an honest guy, you go into a bad system, a lot of corrupt cops, then if you don't take bribes, they're suspicious of you. They'll kill you. If you walk into a good system, then even if you're a bad actor, you're going to wash out, or you're going to reform and you're going to grow up. So what's so cool about our industry is it's all about thinking in systems, whether it be the police systems or the voting systems or the music industry. And that means we get to work with everybody. We get to talk to everybody, and we say, okay, where aren't you being treated fairly? Where do you not have the relationships that you want to have? Where are you letting someone down, or there's an issue, or where do you feel like you've been screwed in the business relationship? And that can be the coffee farmer in Ethiopia, all the way up to a famous musician, to a world leader. It doesn't matter. They all have a grievance somewhere in the arrangements. Central bank issued digital currencies are the same thing. You'd think a central bank's a big, prestigious organization. 2/3 of central banks in the world are non-BIS members. And they get screwed by the big guys. And so they're basically told how they have to run the monies of their country and how their settlement have to work and these things. And they say, well, we'd like to innovate. We'd like to grow. And they end up actually being told, well, if you go down that road, we're going to shut you out of the global economy. Imagine a nation state being told that. So their hands are kind of tied. And this new system comes in and gives people a chance, like El Salvador is doing or others are doing, to kind of innovate and reform and try new things, like maybe universal basic income, or maybe sovereign wealth funds that handle environmental concerns, or maybe you end up going from GDP to HDI and say that growth doesn't matter. It's how we treat everybody that matters. And if they want to go down that road, now we have new tools to enable people to go down that road and really get it done in one way or the other. And to be on ground floor of that is just, it's so much fun. I'm like a kid in a candy store, Billy. I'm loving life every day.
I can only imagine. It is about the system and systems in general. And, even from a musical standpoint, our trio, three guys, keeping it the system of three chords, getting into it is easy. And if we drift, we call it. We've got a kind of a interesting, a highly technical term. We call it going to the Bahamas. Going there is easy. It's how you come back and get back into the flow without losing your way. But as you point out, I really like the. It's quite an objective standpoint to boil it down into just that, systems that they do have some interesting machinations within as you go from system to system, and it's that evaluation that certainly can cull the wheat from the chaff. If you see it's bad, where is the good? And I like the fact that it's open to discussion. Listening to complaints can be a bit challenging, downright draining in a lot of cases. Right. But the fact that if that openness is maintained, it really paints the picture of where the system might need repair.
Yeah. What's so cool is everything I build, almost everything I build, I don't own. You know, it's kind of weird to be a CEO of a company where your product, you don't own the product and you kind of give it away for free. And somehow you can keep the lights on. I always wonder, am I going crazy or something like that? This is interesting. But you're right about it being open. It's like our products are as defined by the people who use them as they are by our engineers and things. And all the time, as somebody comes and wants to do something crazy, it'll change it. Like, for example, the Ministry of Education deal we did in Ethiopia, that's 5 million people that we brought in one deal, and almost all of them are under the age of 18 because it's K through 12 credentials. So there are some really unique challenges to that. In terms of connectivity, less than 20% have access to smartphones, less than 25% are online. So you're building a digital solution for people who are mostly not online. So you have to come up with different distribution models like hub and spoke. And then you have to think about, well, what type of technology do we need to build to allow these things to work without internet connectivity? And also work at a scale of where you can only spend maybe 5 cents a user or 10 cents a user. You know, and scarcity is another big fun part of the puzzle is how do you make it work cheap but well? And that's something we don't do so well in America. You know, we always spend too much and we get half of what we thought we paid for. And somehow we have to have this other mindset. You know, we got to use pencils instead of pens in space. You know, that's where we're at.
Those are, we have to back up just a bit. You've mentioned some rather interesting figures with within the scope of those limitations, which are fairly significant.
Right.
I think that in addition to openness, the interest behind that youthful exuberance, I keep using that one term, youthful exuberance, there is a powerful energy right there. There will be workarounds, but the ungainliness of some of the initial workaround attempts, they seem to find their solutions, which is, I call it door opening. Mm-hmm. And you get past the first door and the subsequent doors seem to open a little bit quicker. I like that.
Yeah. And also you learn, if you learn to listen, you know, we get so used to talking. It's important to sit down, just listen, actually ask people, what problems are we supposed to solve? What do we need to do? What's so cool about these systems is that you learn as much from the users of the systems as you do from your own people. These 5 million kids, we've already started getting a lot of amazing feedback from them, as we've got about 1 million of the 5 million into the system. And we have 40 people on the ground in Addis Ababa right now, just figuring this out. And most of them are actually from Ethiopia. In fact, the vast majority of our employees are Ethiopian in Ethiopia. Wow. You know, the passion is unbelievable. People show up Saturday, people show up Sunday. They work 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Old, young, don't matter. You know, every part of government wants to be part of this. And you know, there's a civil war going on right now in Ethiopia, and we're still rolling out the program, and we're still figuring out how to make progress on a daily basis. So that's the other humbling component of it. And already we got a product pipeline that probably take 5 years to 6 years to saturate as a consequence of this one pilot that we've done and we've rolled out. The other thing is you look, well, where does it go? Once you get the kids in and the credentials in, then the next step is the national ID system of Ethiopia. And this is something I'm super passionate about, because if you grow up in one of these geographies, you have a really hard time proving facts about yourself and a hard time doing business on an international basis. So let's say you have a PhD and you're brilliant artificial intelligence person. As an American employer, it's very difficult for me to actually know the level of credibility the candidate has. For that, you can start creating hierarchies of credentials. You can create much lower cost ways of credentialing people and getting skills for free or near free instead of tens of thousands of dollars to learn something. It's a pretty remarkable thing, all things considered. And what's so astounding to me is that this solution, once it's constructed, we have this old saying in the DRM world, the digital rights management, it's called the smart cow effect. If you have a smart cow and it figures out how to open up the fence, all the cows get out. So you only need one cow to influence the whole herd. Well, it's the same thing with these solutions. Once you have one country that's running it, all the neighbors want it. Kenya wants it, Burundi wants it, all these other guys. So you wake up in 10 years, 20 years, you bring 500 million people, 600 million people into the economy, and you bring them on their own terms. They own their identity, they own their data, they own their credentials, they're portable so they can move between different systems. They're not vendor locked in. And it's up to them to decide what that means to them and what type of business they want to conduct. And if they're good people, bad people, it's completely on their shoulders. And that's a pretty amazing thing, when you actually see that scale.
Yes. That level of focus, as you go into some of these fascinating descriptions, I would think that it's fair to say that we could count on the fact that if the threads can be established, then tethering the threads together, granted it's an issue of time, but once those threads are tethered, the fields of greater charm open up. It's spontaneous. You don't have to convince somebody to go where the grass is greener. Once they see it, as you say, once the cows are out, they'll go.
Exactly. So what excites you most about where Africa is going in the next 10, 15 years? What are the kinds of things you've been following and thinking about?
I got into a bit of brief discussion through the Cardano meeting yesterday. And through the recent eruption and explosive interest behind NFTs, the brainchild that I was working with, our friend Matt Sorum, Mike Fiorentino, and the spiritual level of opening that up. I kind of liked Matt's rather ground level relation. His analogy was the difference between the old days when you'd buy a record album and within a 12-inch square, you had plenty of real estate to look at some artwork. You had plenty of things to read, liner notes. It was a very tactile experience, which seemed to very quickly evaporate. When the genie was out of the bottle, no one really knew which direction it was going. We now know that a lot of that hands-on tactile experience has truly evaporated, but we do have the opportunity now to reconnect. And I think that it's a very important aspect of what can be offered to friends, fans, and followers, that through the new digital domain, NFTs in particular, do open that door to re-establish and refresh a tactile experience, a one-on-one, as you and I are enjoying right now.
Well, what's really cool about NFTs is they can encode 3D printing information inside of them. So not only can you actually create scarcity in a digital world, you can actually use that to create something in the physical world. And then you can actually touch it, see it. But it's so crazy. You're absolutely right. I never thought of it that way, where you used to have these vinyl and you have a lot of stuff to look at, and they had beautiful, cover art for a lot of things. I was a Boston fan, and I always loved their covers, and same for Pink Floyd. And now it's like we have this digital world where we have unlimited space and unlimited screen real estate. You can do everything, but yet we don't ever see it. We just click a button, you hear it, or it plays. I didn't think of that.
I heard it described as we went from a 12-inch square down to a postage stamp, and
Right.
the reduction was dramatic. Um, you mentioned being involved in depth at so many levels, and uh, the notion of giving it away. It's juxtaposed between the school of thought that it's important to sit on your primary matter, and that is to suggest beware of that the gift or the bonus of having awakened to something that is of value.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily want to give it away initially, but if you sit there kind of curmudgeonly with an attitude of I'm not going to be in a sharing position, it's at a standstill. Nothing moves forward.
Right. And you
So
can't have any growth economically or spiritually if you don't give. You have to give more than you take. The
yeah,
world gets better, you know?
yeah, yeah. It's a challenging concept, but
Right.
once you've felt it, once you've uh, had the luxury of tiptoeing through the experience, it's a wide open space. Everybody can win.
Right. All the great things in my life have come as a direct consequence of giving stuff away. Actually, my time in the cryptocurrency space, that's how it got started. My very first venture was the Bitcoin Education Project. This was about 8 years, 9 years ago. And I gave away a free class. And my dad said, well, what the hell are you doing? You're not going to make any money if you give it away for free. I said, oh, don't worry about it. It's all just going to work out. And so I ended up getting 70,000 students, and I got over 5,000 emails with that course. It was called, because I'm a big Peter Sellers fan, it was called Bitcoin or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Crypto, after Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
And anyway, one of my students was a VC guy in China, and he gave me the money I needed to start my first business in the industry. But I've noticed every time we've ever given anything away, it's always come back to us a factor of 5 or 10. And I hope that's a lesson that becomes inculcated throughout the industry. That you should develop this servant mindset of what can we do for others and how can we help others. Spiritually is really good for you, but also it turns out it's always created successful businesses in this respect.
Uh, I mentioned having the opportunity to conduct today's exchange, just you and I together. And as it turns up, now was that initial Bitcoin, the walkthroughing, the walkthroughing of that, did that take place in Berkeley?
No, I did. I record all the lectures here in Colorado, and I put it up for free on a website called Udemy, which is still around, and I think they've been syndicated on YouTube and a couple other platforms. But I gave away the intellectual property, so I released it all as a Creative Commons licensed course, and they got replayed probably millions of times throughout
Yes,
the years.
your good work has spread far and wide. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that was just one thing. And what's really amazing is that almost all the really good Bitcoin education stuff is free, like Gensler's lectures at MIT or the Princeton course and so forth. And that's really cool that not only does a space exist, if you want to learn about it, you don't have to go pay a bunch of money. You can just go and find something online, and it's very credible. What was also really cool was the continuous quality improvement. So when I released the lectures, I had some small mistakes here and there, and then people would email me and say, hey, I don't understand. Oh, well, that's because I made a mistake, and it's wildly out of date. I had a whole lecture on what would it take for Bitcoin to be $10,000. I said, oh, that's pretty crazy. It's not going to happen. But because Bitcoin was like $4 at the time that when it came out, and I was just having fun. I love Austrian economics and open source software and these open ecosystems. So I said, it's so cool that I get to kind of play around and do money stuff. Because we normal people can never actually have a say in how your money works. You can't go to the Federal Reserve and say, hey, the US dollar should work this way. Stop printing money, you dummies. And now somehow we have choice in the matter as private citizens. And that's the first time in our lives where we've had that kind of liberation. And to be able to do that at scale now at nation states with millions of people, just 12 years into this is incredible.
Yes.
The other thing is the adoption. I was in Mongolia. I love Mongolia. If you ever go, it's one of my favorite countries in the world. And we were in the Gobi Desert, and we were hanging around with a camel herder. And he asked me through a translator what I did for a living, and I said, "Oh, well, I'm a cryptocurrency entrepreneur." And he said, "Like Bitcoin?" I was just like, how the hell does a camel herder in Mongolia know about Bitcoin? It turned out he actually owned a little bit, and his brother was holding on to it for him in the capital city, Ulaanbaatar. But just 12 years into this, the movement is so pervasive and spread, and these concepts are so pervasive and spread that a nomad living in a tent with no electricity, no running water, no internet has actually heard of it through the grapevine, like just people word of mouth were talking about it. That's pretty remarkable.
There is a mysterious appeal that is propelling the interest down to individuals that just at face value, you would not necessarily think that they would be tuned in, particularly in the middle of the Gobi Desert. It's entertaining to learn of it. And at the same time, maybe not so surprising at this. I hope you have a seatbelt, because your wishes may be coming very true very quickly. Just yesterday, and that's what, when I use that word appeal, the appearance of Cardano, I think I found it rather magnetic. And one of the threads that pervasively came into the discussions yesterday was the simplification of this rather mysterious platform. I like what Cardano has managed to create a nearly frictionless pathway that can be traversed. It's not going to boat anchor those without a depth of present day understanding. Mm-hmm. I think we can feel the draw is in the fact that the team is putting fires out left and right, and it is streamlining the process where it's going to become quite clear to a novice can really get in and enjoy the benefits of what is being pushed forward at great speed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the Diged paper is a great example of that, where, a lot of people say, well, I'd hold crypto, but the problem is the volatility. The price goes way up, it goes way down. It makes it difficult for a merchant to adopt that. So what do you do about it? Well, you can create instruments that are actually value stable. So they kind of get pegged to the dollar, or they can be pegged to a more inflation resistant basket. And that can run on top of a platform like Cardano and be collateralized by ADA. So we said, well, why don't we just design one? So from the initial conversation to the actual paper to the implementation has only been a matter of 6 months. And we're getting to a point where we're actually getting ready to run experiments. And these experiments probably can be done at scale. So not just something running on the Cardano network, but potentially a nation state central bank digital currency. So a nation's money. And this is actually one of the things that's on the agenda as we go through Africa. And we talk about monetary innovation of what would a Pan-African currency look like a euro for Africa, or what would a better money look like? And what's really cool is it's programmable. So once you have that, then you can start adding things to it. Like, for example, this idea of a sovereign wealth fund and universal basic income. I'm a quarter Norwegian, and Norway's got one of the largest sovereign wealth funds. It's $1.4 trillion. It's just a massive amount of money. Well, if they wanted to, they just give everybody in the country a $50,000 check. I mean, that's how much money they have on hand. And so good monetary policy there. Well, what if, like Burundi or Malawi or one of these countries adopted a CBDC, and every time a transaction happened, it generated a transaction fee, and that fee would go into a sovereign wealth fund. And then every quarter, they just give a dividend to everybody in the country, it's something like that. That's an experiment that we literally could run in a 2-year, 3-year time horizon. Normally, when you talk about the money of a nation state, you're talking about decades, centuries. You're talking about huge transnational agreements. And for that to run there, and it can be done by a small group of people, 5-10 people, and the government innovation office, and could roll out over the whole country in a matter of just a month on a cell phone, it's pretty extraordinary, and it's going to bode very good things, I think, for the future.
Yes, and not to overly brag on Cardano, but another aspect that is being addressed, and it's of value to the bystanders that are getting very curious about the whole crypto universe. The custodianship that exists, as far as I know, within the confines of what Cardano stands for, it's not out of the question to make certain that I guess I'm trying to say the spiritual nature of it all is not being ignored. The bad guys may be waiting in the wings, but they're not in the shadows. They've already been weeded out, and they're being held off. I guess it comes down to the elegance of this custodianship, because to me, what Cardano is really promising, it seems to be a stepping stone into the blockchain universe, which it is providing an enrichment of the experience. It's really cool.
Right. Right. And, you know, it's an interesting question of how do you get good custodianship of a decentralized organization? We haven't solved that problem as an industry yet. And, you know, usually what ends up happening is out of frustration or necessity, you find some sort of beneficent hero to come in like Washington on a white horse and save everybody, and then hope that he retires after he saves everybody. But usually they make themselves king for life. That's what human history has shown us. So the question is, when you go from a centralized to a decentralized ecosystem, how do you make sure the ecosystem can evolve, is legitimate, is effective, preserves its original intent and principles, but at the same time doesn't create a king or some small group of people that get a lot of power or can feast off the system? I think that's the hardest part of all the problems. The things like scalability and stability and, you know, a lot of this technological stuff, every university in the world's working on it. There's a lot of engineers working on it. We have some great ones, and our competitors have great ones, and we all learn from each other. But the governance part is, I think, you're absolutely right, the most unique component of that, because it's so easy for bad guys to come in, and they always come in with honeyed words. They always come in and they, during a crisis, and tell you how great they are and how they're going to save everything and make everything amazing. And then they don't leave after you've invited them in. It's like the vampire. Once you invite it into the house, it doesn't leave, you know? So what's so cool is when you hold a US dollar, you have no say in how that dollar works. When you hold ADA, you have a say. Everybody who holds it can vote. Everybody in it can participate in a process. And we already have about $1 billion of ADA in the Catalyst Fund, and we have great participation there. 33,000 people participated in the last voting round. We think over 50,000 will participate this way around. It's early days. It'll grow to millions over the next few years. And suddenly the people building on it, the people holding it, the people interacting with it, they have as much say as the people who invented the system. And if you've designed it the right way with the right principles, those principles can't be violated. The moment for me where Bitcoin got great as a technology and what really legitimized the ecosystem was the failure of Mt. Gox. That was our 2008 so Mt. Gox was an exchange, and the audience who don't know, and it collapsed in 2013. And at the time, it held about 20% of all the value of Bitcoin in that one exchange. So it was like the Lehman Brothers. That collapse was catastrophic. The people who maintained Bitcoin, they had personally millions of dollars of their own money on Mt. Gox. And if they let that collapse happen without a bailout, they'd lose all their money. But they chose to let it happen because they said, we need to have integrity in the system. We can't reverse transactions. Things are immutable. You can't change the monetary policy. And that to me said, this is a fundamentally different animal than any of these social systems that we create in America or Europe or other places. Because every time a crisis happens, somebody shows up and says, all right, well, I know we have principles and integrity and commandments and constitutions, but we can't let this crisis happen. We have to just, intervene, but we won't do it again after this thing. It's too big to fail. We have to take care of it. Well, once Bitcoin didn't do that and it survived and thrived, it said you can have systems exist where that is the default behavior. The thing you read on the label, it stays that way. It's always honest. It's not going to lie to you. It's not going to change. So then the question is, what type of government can you build on top of social structures that are immutable like that. And suddenly now your voting system has that same. So no one ever questions if the vote is a problem because you can check it yourself. Suddenly your money system is this way. Suddenly all the other things that you issue there, these NFTs, people can't take them from you. Once they're issued, they're yours. And no one can go 5 years later, 10 years later, grab it out of your wallet or something like that. You know, and so I'm really excited about that part. I think that's the biggest, most hidden gem. And I'm glad you brought it up about the cryptocurrency space as a whole, is this idea of like a law of physics for social contracts, for the way we treat each other, connect to each other, and also a return to integrity and a return to honesty. We don't have that in society right now.
You're right on it. You've hit the nail on the head. The moral standing, which has a shiny side, up until now, was maybe not so difficult in certain instances to overshadow that shiny side. I dare say that it is becoming increasingly prohibitive, and to bring it down to just common sense, the bad guys are going to have a real tough time figuring out how to trash the system. There's too many eyes available. Which is quite appealing. We've seen that shiny side darkened, but not now.
Yeah, and that's what makes it fun. And what's so cool is kids get to grow up in a world where that's the default. You know, they don't have to be cynical anymore. That's the thing that worries me the most about the way the world's going. Is usually, no matter how bad it gets you, I say, well, the next generation is going to figure it out. Those kids they'll get together and make sure it gets done. Unfortunately, the next generation, you talk to those kids, they're like, oh, it's hopeless. The whole world's on fire. I said, well, at least Billy Joel told you that we didn't start it.
Yeah. And there's a real entertaining element that overshadows anything on the negatives are already outweighed by sheer entertainment. The smile that comes into the room seems to be staying there. When you see them leaving the building with the smile still on the face, it's very encouraging.
Yeah, exactly. And we can finally have institutions that can't lie to us, and we can finally have institutions that have integrity again. They deserve that. We deserve
Start the clock. Start the clock now.
Exactly. Well, Billy, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for sitting down with us, spend some time, and I really enjoyed it.
Indeed. Refresh my memory of your upcoming 3-week sojourn to back to Africa. You go? Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm taking 2 weeks off after the summit's over, and I haven't had a vacation in a few years, and I think I'm just going to collapse and die. I used to have a lot more hair.
Yeah. Well, if you go this little African hat, yeah,
exactly. And so I'm going to South Africa to start. We'll be in Cape Town with Ramaphosa's family, and then after that we move up to Burundi and Malawi, and then Zanzibar. And then Zanzibar is really cool because we have a partner there called World Mobile. And they just finished a $40 million round. So they're very well funded. And they're kind of creating like a micro ISP model where there's community ownership of the internet service provider. And then what you can do is have small businesses create internet for their communities and kind of franchise it and make profit from that. So we've been working very closely with them for about 3 years. And now they finally have the resources to actually run very significant pilots in the country of Zanzibar. And they'll be able to probably give hundreds of thousands of people internet before the end of 2022. And if that model works, we can franchise it across the entire continent of Africa and help get as many people online. Then we'll go up north to Ethiopia. We're meeting with the prime minister and a few other people. And we'll talk about everything from sovereign bonds to for hydroelectric power to digital identity. And then Kenya is probably the one I'm most looking forward to because I get to see the wildebeest migration. So there's 1.3 million of them running around, and that's going to be a chance of a lifetime. But then the other thing is the microfinance portfolio. So we have a partner there called Possessia, and we're doing $150,000 pilot with them for small business loans and individual loans. And then once we do that legacy pilot, we're going to do a Cardano-based pilot, and then we're going to compare the non-performing loan rate of the legacy system to the blockchain-based system and see which one would outperform which. and then up to Egypt. And that's just opening the marketplace. Plus, go hang around the pyramids and all the others. It's my birthday then, so I figured it'd be fun to get a little bit of fun before I go on home.
You got to make another one. Well, this has been time well spent. I look forward to maintaining our relationship as the bulldozer is crushing through and making way for these really exciting possibilities. It's the sun will rise. I've got that feeling, but perhaps we can sit down and swap a few tall tales. I'm sure you'll be returning with a carload.
Absolutely. You got to come out my ranch one of these days. I got one in Wyoming, 11,000 acres and 500 bison. And so well more welcome to have you come on by. And I'd love to see what you guys accomplish with the NFTs on Cardano. And I know that's just the beginning. And as that grows, there's going to be a lot of really cool things that come out. And what's so exciting, there's so much creativity. There's a lot of musicians, there's a lot of artists, young artists too. I get their artwork all the time. This is something came from, I think, a 15-year-old gal, and she hand painted all these and sent them to me. So this is a peacock. And then I got another one right here with the bulls and the bears and me drinking a coconut drink. I guess I tweeted that picture at some point. And then what she does is she turns them to NFTs on the Cardano blockchain. And she's actually made more money than her dad made this year selling those. So she's having a good time.
Yeah. Just yesterday, after hanging up from the rather intriguing meeting, I got my scratch pad was out and about, and I did a little self-portrait there. The creative juices are definitely waiting to be ignited. So let's keep the ball rolling.
Absolutely, Billy. Thank you so much. This was so much fun.